Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Tonight, our topic is a conversation with 2017 presidential aspirant, Madam MacDella Cooper. And with that, I join my co-host, Danielle knuckles-guishard, who's going to introduce the guest and also take it away from me.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to Focus on Liberia. As always, I'd like to ask you, our audience, to follow us on YouTube. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Focus on Liberia, and we also have our page on Facebook, Focus on Liberia, so please like and follow us on Facebook as well. Before we begin today, I would like to take this time to express my sympathy to Dennis, my host, and his family. Dennis has lost a brother-in-law, his wife's brother, so I just wish to express my sympathy to Dennis and Mrs. Ja.
Thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome. As Dennis said, tonight we have Madam MacDella Cooper, and to tell you a little bit about her, MacDella Mackie Cooper was born in Monrovia, Liberia in the mid-1970s. She had a happy childhood until her life was deeply affected by the Liberian Civil War in the 1990s. After enduring firsthand some unthinkable and unspeakable atrocities during the war, she sought refuge in Cote d'Ivoire as one of thousands who fled the conflict that killed more than 200,000 people and displaced hundreds of thousands more. In 1993, MacDella migrated to the United States and was reunited with her family in Newark, New Jersey. She attended Barringer High School in Newark, New Jersey, where she ranked third in her class of 1,200 students and was awarded a full academic scholarship to the College of New Jersey in Ewing, New Jersey, where she subsequently earned a degree in electronic communications. Following her graduation from college, Cooper moved to New York City to pursue a career in fashion, marketing, and public relations. She later branched out into corporate planning, consulting for organizations like Citigroup, Eridi Pisano, Duca Sartoria, and Starwood, amongst others. In the midst of this successful career in fashion and corporate planning, MacDella began the admirable work of donating funds and resources to women's and children's causes in Liberia and internationally. That small act of charity, supporting worthy causes, was the cornerstone of the founding of the MacDella Cooper Foundation, MCF, whose mission is to educate, train, and motivate Africa's most vulnerable children, disadvantaged youth, and marginalized women to become productive contributors to their nation's economic, social, and political development. In 2010, Cooper launched the MCF Academy, a tuition-free boarding school for vulnerable and at-risk children, and was the first of its kind in Liberia. The Academy's mission is to provide a quality education and life skills for disadvantaged children in an environment that is conducive to learning. At the MCF school, students get 3 meals a day consisting of healthy, locally grown ingredients. Cooper hopes the Academy will foster future leaders who take pride in themselves and their country. Over the past 15 years, Ms. Cooper has worked to promote effective leadership and good and inclusive governance in Liberia. Inasmuch as her efforts have primarily been through philanthropy and peace-building missions, these commitments are founded on the moral imperative to substantially improve Liberia's social services, which are currently in an appalling state. Access to basic services remains well below pre-Civil War levels for slightly more than a third of the population. And remarkably, an even higher proportion of the country's citizens survive on less than $1 a day. On October 17th, 2016, Madam MacDella Cooper publicly announced her candidacy for president of Liberia in the 2017 elections. Cooper became the only female candidate running for the nation's highest office. She emerged ninth amongst a field that included 19 male candidates, following a brutal, hard-fought, and often divisive contest, further promoting the cause and prospects for women and their empowerment in a paternalistic society. Ms. Cooper holds several leadership, advisory, and board positions in the United States, Liberia, and other countries, including representation with humanitarian organizations. She has also received a number of awards globally. So with that, we'd like to say welcome, Ms. Cooper, to Focus on Liberia, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here with you guys.
Okay, so to begin, let's start at the beginning. You were young when the Civil War in Liberia started in the 90s. So can you tell us what your experience was and what you witnessed at that time?
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me first start by saying, Dennis, have my sympathy for your loss to you and your family. I just wish you, peace in your family for your loss of your brother-in-law. Yes, back to your question about the Civil War. I'm not the only Liberian who went through this horrible atrocity of experiencing the Civil War. We just had a 14-year-long Civil War in Liberia. But I thank God I was able to survive the war. And my great-grandmother always say, what doesn't kill you fattens you. So I was blessed with gaining a lot of experience and wisdom through this horrible ordeal. But the Civil War started in the late 1990s, 1989, and went into the 90s. I was about 12 years old in 1989, and I turned 13 by the time the war hit my neighborhood in Monrovia. My stepfather, who raised me, was the head of the UNCHR in Liberia. We had a normal life. The privilege that Liberia had to offer at the time. I went to a decent school. My father did a lot. He had 3 children, and my mom had 3 children. They got together and got married and had 3 more children. So there were about 9 children in my family. But when the war hit, my mother was already on holidays out of the country. And I was left with my father and my older siblings. And when the rebels finally hit my neighborhood, they took my father for questioning. And my father left the house on July 17th of 1990, and we have not seen my father till today. And as I mentioned earlier, he worked for the United Nations, and eventually the United Nations gave us a death certificate for him, because after 7 years of search for a United Nations employee, they eventually just declared the person dead. And so it's been all these years we haven't seen my father. So my brothers and I left the house because we were harassed constantly without having an adult with us. My elder siblings left, and they had American citizenship. I barely even had a passport. And so the United States Embassy airlifted all of the American citizens that were in Liberia at the time. So my older siblings had U.S. passports, and so they were airlifted to America, leaving my two brothers and I in the country, in the house. We didn't have passports. We didn't have American citizenship. We were just Liberian kids living in Liberia, enjoying Liberia. So we were there to fend for ourselves. My mother was gone. Now my father was gone, and now my older siblings are gone. I was 13 years old. My oldest brother at the time was about 16, and the one between us was about 14, turning 15. So we have 3 extremely young children on their own in the midst of the worst civil war West Africa had ever seen. We had to use our emotional intelligence, and every ounce of intelligence we had in us, we had to use that to survive the war. There was really no metrics as to how to survive a brutal civil war. I wish someone had written a book for that, but unfortunately we didn't have one. So we just had to trust God and we had to use our just whatever wisdom we had to get through to safety. We went looking for our father. We didn't find our father, but along the way, we saw lots of horrible things that a child should never have exposure to. You know, seeing older people left on the side for dead, and children abandoned, dogs eating flesh of human beings, some half dead, some alive. I mean, some alive and some, pretty much on the way to dying. And we saw some pretty horrible things. And at those checkpoints, they were horror stories. Those checkpoints were not pretty. We went through a lot. I went through a lot with my siblings, but thank God, after 7 months of searching for my father, we ended up in the refugee camp in dr.nya, which is at the border of Liberia and Ivory Coast. We were happy to have left Liberia. When we got to the refugee camp in dr.nya, it was almost at the time when Samuel was captured and killed, unfortunately, in Monrovia. So we got to the Ivory Coast, living in a refugee camp. We were fortunate to get in touch with my mother, who was then, by that time, she had made her way to the United States, and she was very happy. She asked for my father. We told her that dad was missing. We couldn't find him. And so we just continued. She started the application to apply for us to join her in the United States. So it took 2.5 years for the United States to actually agree that we were okay enough to go to America. And then eventually we got an immigration visa to go and join my mother in 1993 in Newark, New Jersey. So that was there's a lot more, which an hour interview wouldn't cover. But the war was no joke. The war was terrible. The war really opened my eyes to a lot of things. And I saw death. I saw people get tortured, get killed. I lost my father, who had provided us with a lifestyle we were accustomed to. Being without a mother in the midst of a war, starving almost to death because there are times we couldn't eat. The rebels were looking for young girls who they could take as sex slaves, sex slaves. And if you were okay with providing sex in exchange for food, they fed you. Otherwise, you were left to fend for yourself. And so my brothers and I decided we were not going to fight in the war. We're not going to become child soldiers because we didn't want to tarnish my mother's reputation. So we tried to be good kids in the midst of a horrible civil war. It wasn't easy.
Right. And Ms. Cooper, if you can come closer to the phone when you were talking, you were getting a little low as time went by. Thank you. But that was a horror story, and I had similar experience, so sorry to hear that. Go ahead, Danielle.
So Ms. Cooper, how did those experiences, your experience in Liberia during the war, your years in Cote d'Ivoire as a refugee, how did those experiences shape you into the philanthropist you are today?
Well, as I mentioned, I migrated to the Ivory Coast during the 1990s, the early 1990s. And so in the Ivory Coast, I was lucky I'm an avid churchgoer. I just grew up with Christian grandparents, and my mom, being a Christian, she took us to church every Sunday. And so my custom was to go to church every Sunday, no matter what I did on Saturday night. I was in a church house on a Sunday morning. And luckily for me, I kept that custom. And when I was in the Ivory Coast living as a refugee, I went to church every Sunday. I found an international church locally, and I attended the international church. And one day in church, I saw this lady who asked me, why was I in church by myself every day? What was my parent? And so I told her I was a refugee from Liberia, and I was there waiting. I was in transit waiting for a visa to go to the United States of America. And this lady actually started to cry. Her tears started to ball up in her eyes. And when I looked at her, I said to myself in my mind, I thought, why is this? I'm telling a lady my life story. I'm a refugee. This is just normal life for me. And she was crying. So eventually this lady felt so sorry for when she heard my story, she tried to do something about it, which was to adopt me in the Ivory Coast. And, but for me, that was normal life. You're giving a life, and if you didn't do the right thing, it was taken away from you. And so when she was asking me the questions and telling me that, oh, a young girl should never go through what you're going through, when I was living in Ivory Coast, I barely had a meal, 2 decent meals to eat per week, because my mom went from being the wife of a diplomat, having drivers and maids in my house in Liberia, to being a woman who was cleaning people's houses in America just to put one meal on the table, living on food stamps in America, to put a meal on the table for her children. And so when she could, she sent money to Ivory Coast for us to pay rent and buy food. And when she could not afford it, we didn't eat. So we were used to it. But anyway, long story short, so this lady in Ivory Coast took me in. She told me I could live in her house. She had a 2-bedroom apartment. She worked for the American Embassy in Ivory Coast, in Abidjan. And I lived with her for about a year before I actually got the approval from the American government to go to the United States. And so the war really showed me a lot. There was a lot of negativity, but there was also a lot of beauty, because this woman, not knowing me from anywhere, out of the kindness of her heart, took me in. And when she did that, that brought a lot of healing to me from the things I had seen previously. And I committed to myself that when I'm ever put in a position, or if I ever do have the opportunity to help someone as she helped me, I would do it. And that was the beginning of my philanthropic initiative. It was my commitment to doing good, because good was more contagious than bad. I went through the most horrific experience that anyone could go through the Civil War. But after that lady took good care of me out of the kindness of her heart, I was committed to doing good in this world. I didn't remember the bad things I had gone through, the near-death experiences from the war. But I found beauty in the good and kindness that she granted to me. For a year, I lived in her house. She treated me like her own child. She fed me. So that really birthed the philanthropist I am today, the humanitarian I am today. So when I got to America, I wanted to do nothing but become successful so that I can come back to Africa and give back in the same way. So my experience in Ivory Coast really was a starting point of my commitment to giving back to Africa, because someone had done it for me.
Awesome. So when you arrived to the U.S., you went to high school and excelled, as we explained, or as we read in your bio, and then you got into the fashion industry after college. So how did that happen? Because you studied electronic communications in college. So how did you transition into the fashion industry?
Well, as I mentioned to you just a few minutes ago, I was so poor living in the Ivory Coast. I could barely afford 2 meals per week. We lived on a jacket and poulet braisé, if we could afford a poulet, or roasted fish. That's all we could afford in the Ivory Coast. I became very thin. I didn't have money to buy any food that was nutritious. And so when I got to the United States, of course, I lived with my godmother, who then became my godmother, Pamela Brogdon. I lived in her house, but my system wasn't used to taking a lot of food. So I became very thin, with the cheekbones and the collarbones. And by the time I got to America, I had a decent look, I think, and with a thin body, photographers thought I was gorgeous. And so they started asking me to photograph me. Mm-hmm. And they said, we'll pay you just to take your pictures. And I was like, whoa, that's fantastic. That's great. I mean, which young girl in her teenage years wouldn't want to be photographed and put on the cover of magazines? I was very excited. Photographers picked me up from high school. I did lots of fashion shows, especially in the malls. I worked for brands like Wilson, it was a leather brand, and lots of other young people brand, like young kids brands. And so that was the start of my modeling career. I went off to college. I was picked up by Glamour magazine to do an editorial for them. And then Cosmopolitan came on board. So by the time I graduated from college, I was sort of, this model that I never really signed up to be. I love the fashion world. Yes, I was very much interested in building MacDella Cooper to return to Africa to give back. In our culture now, when you leave Liberia, you go somewhere, especially women country, you gotta come back to Liberia being something. You bring nothing by the time I'm empty-handed, people look at you and say, what kind of America you went to? So I had to work to build MacDella Cooper so that MacDella Cooper can then come back to Africa and do good and give back. And so the modeling thing was great, but I also knew I could not depend on modeling because my mom, being a typical African mother, she said, when I told her I want to major in fashion, she says to me, I don't think so. You think you come and go major in fashion and then you'll be coming back to my house and be asking for rent? I can pay rent for my children. So that fashion thing you're talking about, that you better go do something else. So I quickly went back to my college brochure and I looked for something that would make my mother proud. And, communication was something I loved doing. But I tried to find something in the brochure. She wanted me to major in engineering. I said, in the engineering business, I'm at you. So I looked at electronic communication. So I took electronic communication as my major. It sounded more sophisticated than just fashion or just communication. So my mom was very happy. When I graduated, I gave her the certificate and I moved to New York City and was hired by Ralph Lauren to run their company. And so I was working as a model, but I was also working as a corporate executive for Ralph Lauren. So I was living the best of two worlds.
Yeah. That's amazing. So your time in the fashion industry, modeling, working behind the scenes, corporate event planning, corporate consulting, what experiences or what did you learn during that time that, some days you would say, yeah, this is something I want to take back to Liberia, or this is something that I can apply to Liberia?
Well, the truth of the matter is, I was doing very well in New York City. I became one of the popular girls in New York City, and popular for a reason. I was very well liked. I was from Liberia. I was different. I was unique. I was a model. I mean, I had life at its fingertip in New York City. I was successful. I had my own money. I had a gorgeous home in New York City, which was, pretty big deal for a Black girl living in New York City. I would travel frequently to Milan, to Paris, to London. And I started to become known on the international scene. But it was one day, not just one day, but on several occasions, I should say, people ask me, where are you from? And I would always say from Liberia. And the only thing they knew about my country was the fact that we're having this horrible civil war. And that didn't sit right with me. Being successful, being a Black woman, being a Liberian woman. And because I was always a token Black girl in most group I was in, or most settings I was in. And so when people ask me, it came from these great countries, the United States, from the UK, from Italy, just all over the world. And when you ask people where you're from, they will tell you I'm from this country. You oftentimes will talk about the economy, you will talk about, some political things, but my country was known to be a country that was having the worst civil war that anyone had ever heard of. And so that started to open up my consciousness that I don't feel comfortable, number one, being the only Black girl or Black woman or Liberian woman in this setting. These people's ancestors have worked really hard, made a lot of sacrifices for their offsprings now to enjoy the benefits of their hard work. Now, the only thing my ancestors were known for, or at least my country was known for, was a horrible civil war. So I thought to myself, I gotta do something to change this dialogue. I don't want to be known to be from a country that it's the only legacy my country has is civil war. So my consciousness started to really open up, and when I got back to New York, I was in my apartment doing some research, and I kid you not, and I'm going to be very candid with you. This might be a hard pill for some of the viewers to swallow, but when I saw the image of Liberia online, of the assassination from the 1980s, that broke my heart completely. That image of those 13 men on the pole, being killed, being shot to death, that really broke my heart. Because I remember very well as a young girl living in Webble, I was raised in Webble district in River G, which was in Maryland, but now I moved to River G. I knew the day when my great-grandparents took me into the forest and we spent the night in the forest because 1980 coup was happening. And so I heard about 1980, but it was my first time seeing the image alive. So long story short, that broke my heart. It broke my spirit. And I started to think, why was my country just knew for horrible things, murders of people, innocent people. What do you call it, innocent or not? Whichever side you're on, doesn't matter. We're all Liberians at the end of the day. We should not be known for massacres and coup d'etats and civil war and murders and rape. And, but what we need to transition into being a nation that's known for its productivity, its good economy, its great leadership, it's the way we respect human rights. And so in all of that, having this great life, my consciousness was just, it was just eating me up on the inside. I have got to do something. I can't just be the successful New York City girl from Liberia. What can I do about Liberia? And so I talked to my boss at my job at Ralph Lauren. I told her I wanted to do something to help my country. And I kid you not, everyone I spoke to about starting a foundation said, how can we support you? And when I started my foundation back in 2003, everyone came together in New York City that I knew, my friends from Europe and other parts of the world, and said, MacDella, how can we help you? And it was amazing. We built this foundation called the MacDella Cooper Foundation, and we started channeling support to Liberia. It was just barrels filled with canned goods and supplies for women and children. We did it. It felt great. I started hosting my fundraisers around New York City. My friends were coming, and this was my beginning. This was the beginning of my giving back to my country. And this really made me feel great. I hate to say it, but it made me feel great. Mm-hmm. So my philanthropy work started from there. And eventually I could no longer sit in my showroom or in this Ralph Lauren corporation. I couldn't sit there anymore and just be this corporate girl or woman, whatever you call me at the time. Mm-hmm. I eventually left my job, quit everything to serve Liberia. I started just working on my foundation. I took a full-time, non-paying position with my foundation, traveling back and forth to Liberia to come and meet the people we're giving to meet the people coming out of war. My heart was for the young girls who weren't so as lucky as I was. I went through the war, but thank God I was never raped. I was never hurt. No one ever touched me physically. I did come out with a lot of emotional scars, but no one ever physically touched me during the war. There are a lot of young women I knew and women and kids who either got shot or got raped and were pregnant, had several kids for rebels or whichever side the bad guys were on. I knew a lot of people who went through horrible things than I did. And so my heart I was so committed. I left everything. I started to my interest in the things of the world started to fade away. And I started to just pull out to Liberia, just anywhere I could. So I don't want to dwell too long on the answer, but that was the evolution of my philanthropic initiative for Liberia.
Okay. Awesome. And to just talk a little bit more about your philanthropy, let our audience know a little more about the MacDella Cooper Foundation and what you guys do. I know most people out there have heard of the Academy and that it's tuition free, but just give us a little more on the foundation and what you guys do.
Sure. The MacDella Cooper Foundation started with a mandate to support women and children coming out of the Civil War. We did a great job feeding and clothing and paying rent for people coming from refugee camps in surrounding or bordering countries, helping them relocate, repatriate to Liberia, I should say, or resettled. But when I got back home and I met the people who were supporting, I saw that there were so many more kids on the streets in Liberia. And so we transitioned from just giving aid to actually putting kids into school, because it's one thing you can give temporary relief, but eventually Liberia was going to need educated young people. And so we started focusing on educating young people across the board. For the young people who will go through traditional education, we put them in, put them from first, second, third, all the way to senior high school, 12th grade. And some students, the youth, we help with scholarship to go to college. We had a few kids, young people go to Cottington University and graduate with degrees today. And then we started working with women's group, helping women become more self-sufficient so that they can care for their families and their children, because oftentimes in Liberia, and even the statistics up to today, we have about 90% of our households are without a male representation in homes in Liberia. Women are the caregiver, women are the provider, women are the backbone of the society. So we wanted to strengthen women, especially women who are single mothers. We supported them so that they can care for their families and make sure the kids were in school, giving them the proper nutrition. The MacDella Cooper Foundation has been involved in so many aspects of development, human development. And in 2008, we made a decision to build our own boarding school. We built the MacDella Cooper Foundation Academy, which is the MCF Academy today. It's been open for 10 years, and we're graduating our first senior high students out of the 12th grade. They'll be going off to college. We just got some scholarship from Canada, and some of our students, hopefully by the grace of God, will make it to Canada to college, and some of them will be going to Liberia, to universities, and around the West African region, or maybe across Africa. So that's what we do. We will focus on education today. We also host conferences for young people. We build a lot of collaboration in the healthcare sector, in the education sector, in the security, providing homes for people paying rent. So there are several things we do around Liberia just to let people know that they are not alone. Even though the economy is tough, Liberia is still struggling to come out of the crisis mode into what we call normalcy. But we stand with people in the hard times to let them know that, maybe government just doesn't have all of what they need to reach to you, but we are here with you.
Wonderful.
If you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing with Madam MacDella Cooper. She is an activist, a philanthropist, and also a politician. In 2017, she contested for the presidency of Liberia.
Yes, and so I know you're short on time today, Ms. Cooper, so I'll go into that next, the 2017 presidential election. So you were the only female candidate in the 2017 presidential race. And at that point, Ellen Johnson had been president for 12 years. Do you feel that that placed you at an advantage or disadvantage?
No, I think Madam Shirley, being the first elected female, democratically elected female head of state on the continent of Africa was a great advantage from not just me, but a lot of women across the continent and across the world. So there was nothing about it being a disadvantage to me. Some people may disagree with Madame Shirley's policies and her decisions, but for me as a woman, it was a fantastic thing. It was great. I mean, a lot of women, we think we can do everything, but it's always nice to see a real life example. And I think one of the things that hold women back today is because of the lack of examples in a lot of the fields that we want to go into. So Madame Shirley being a president for 12 years, successful, 2 terms election, opened the door for me to actually step into the arena. Of course, I faced a lot of challenges as a woman, the only woman being in race for the 2017 presidential election. I got a lot of hate mail, a lot of threats, a lot of abuse from people, but that didn't deter me. I know one woman had done it, of course. I could do what the woman had done. I could succeed. I saw someone go there and succeed, so I knew it was doable. So the threats, the abuse, the insults, the attempt to degrade, it didn't bother me at all. I had one mission. My mission was a better Liberia for all people that call themselves Liberians. I was there to make a Liberia work for them. So when you become a politician, you go into this space. You don't go there with an attempt to be liked. If you're not already liked in your world, you don't attempt to go run for office, because it's not a place for it's not a child's play. This is serious, it's tough. But MacDella Cooper is a strong woman, so there was no threat, no abuse, nothing that people could have said to me that was going to happen. So it was Ellen did a great job for every woman. Whether they agree to it or they don't, Ellen did a fantastic job for the rest of us. She was a great example.
All right. Talking about the 2017 elections, I want to play a clip. I think it was your campaign stop. Let's listen.
hopeful. I see a Liberia that has a great future ahead. I see a Liberia that can be anything we want it to be. I see a Liberia that is prominent. I see a Liberia that's successful. I see a Liberia that's beautiful. I see a Liberia that has so much opportunity that the world, the first world, will go right to. But I think the only thing that stops Liberia from being what it should be is us Liberia. Because I think when Liberian people are ready, we will have the country we deserve. When the Liberian people are ready, we will stand up and say we want good leadership, and that's all we will have. I think our leadership falters when we falter as a people. I think our children starve and are abused because we're tolerated. When the day comes when Liberian people decide, I'm going to put all things aside, but I tribalism, whether it is political affiliation, whether it is economic status, race, or agency. When Liberian people decide, none of those things matter anymore.
Madam Cooper, do you still see that Liberia?
Absolutely. Even more than when I made that speech back in 2015. I still really do believe that Liberia is a great country. And Liberia will become a great country. It's just, there are some things that are blinding us from seeing the greatness of our nation and in us as a people. It's just a matter of time. When we put those things aside, we will have the country we deserve. And so I still, even more now than before, believe what I said in 2015.
Okay. And so in 2017, you ran on the Liberia Restoration Party ticket, and you had a 5-star platform of hope and reform. And that was free education, universal health care, electricity in every home, decentralization, and land ownership. So to go into free education for every child, you have experience opening and running a school, and you understand the costs involved with that. With Liberia already having such a small national budget, how did you feel that it could be done, or that it's possible for there to be free education for every child?
Well, Liberia has a very small budget of 450 million United States dollars annually. And that has been decreased from the previous years, which was much higher. It was started with 650 and now we're down to 450. So about, I would say 80% of the national operating budget goes to salary and goods and services for officials. Now, we can balance our budget and redirect funds into areas where it should go. We cannot take away from the education sector. We have to prioritize education. It is not, how do I put this? You cannot use 80% of the national operating budget and pay salaries for those who are already lived their lives and are in public service. You don't go to public service to get rich. You go to public service to serve the people, right? The voters, the citizens of the country. And if we take all of the funds and the resources or the budget and pay salaries, then we neglect our healthcare sector, our education sector, and the other services that we should be providing as a nation to the citizens of the land. Government is there to serve the people, not itself. There is no country in the world where government is told your main purpose is to serve yourself. Elected officials are elected by the people to serve the people. And it says it's very well in our Constitution as well. So if I'm not comfortable with the fact that we use up to 80% of our national operating budget to pay salaries for people who work in government, we need to balance the budget, repurpose funds, and invest in areas like education for the next generation coming in. Otherwise, within the next 20 years, when young people are supposed to be going into public service, they will be uneducated. I don't think we want to have a government filled with people who are uneducated. So it is very important that we invest in the healthcare sector. We also have a lot of innovative sectors that we're not investing in, like agriculture, for example. Liberia is spending 200 million annually in purchasing rice from abroad and importing it into Liberia. We have the rainiest rainforest in West Africa. Why aren't we investing in our agro sector? It's not going to happen overnight. We're not all of a sudden going to stop importing rice and all of a sudden going to grow and feed everyone in Liberia. But we have got to start the process somewhere. And so that's my plan. My plan is to balance the budget, repurpose funds into the education sector, invest in alternative sectors or industries so that we bring in more capital other than just our dependency on iron ore, the sale of our iron ore. There's a lot we can do. We don't have enough time in this hour to go through it, but there is an economic plan that works for Liberia. And it does not include using 80% of the national operating budget to pay salaries. That's it.
Okay.
Madam Cooper, you went to Liberia because for philanthropic reason.
Absolutely.
How did you move on to running for president? What was that thing? One thing that said, okay, I'm going to run. What was it?
Great question, Dennis. When I moved to Liberia in 2005, I started to serve Liberia. Eventually, I realized I was doing work that government should be responsible for. It is not the individual that is responsible for the citizens, the care of the citizens of the land. It is government responsibility to care for the citizens, provide basic goods and services for the citizens, meaning government is responsible for providing access to healthcare. Government has to build hospitals in the country, in every part of the country. Not so many hospitals, but every area of the country should have a clinic or a hospital so that when the people are ill, they go to the hospital. It is government responsibility to see to it that every child, I didn't say one or two or three, or just to come up with children. I said every child of the nation that is born in that nation should have access to free education, because no child should be left without knowing or without being in an education house or being in an education system, right, and go to adulthood without an education. That's what we call the violation of human rights. And there are many governments across Africa that's in violation of those basic human rights. It is government responsibility to see to it that they don't give you free transportation, but there are buses on the road. So when you want to go from one point of the country to the other, the government should provide buses so you can pay to go on a bus and go to where you want to go. It is government responsibility to see to it that you have roads that are safe so that your bus doesn't go in the pothole and you jump off the bus, jump off the road, and you die. It is government responsibility to see to it that there are affordable housing. I say free housing. I say affordable housing that every citizen in the land, no matter how rich or poor, you should be able to afford to live in a decent house and not zing round or mud houses. That's why our country is on the list of poor countries in the world, because we got more zing round and mud houses in our country. So our country has now become a poor country. So my transition from philanthropy to policies, my interest became policies. Why? I started to see we didn't have the right policies in place to serve our people. And it was not my job. Of course, I can come as a philanthropist, as a humanitarian, to provide basic relief or short-term. That's what humanitarian causes or philanthropy causes are for. Short-term relief until government can step in and take on its responsibility. It's almost like philanthropists are your neighbor. And when the parents can afford food today, the neighbor give you 1 cup of rice. That's what philanthropists do. But the neighbors are not there to give you rice every day. So my responsibility as a philanthropist was to step in temporarily. And when I saw my duty to these kids and these women's group, it was a long-term thing. I said, we need to put in policies in our nation that will grant our citizens access, basic access. And so the transition from being a philanthropist to go into policies, the avenue was to go through politics. And so that's what sparked me to jump into politics in Liberia. Because if the politicians have forgotten what is their responsibility to the elected or the electorates, people who voted them into office, then those of us philanthropists who understand what the role of government officials should be or is, then we need to step in. And so a philanthropist going into politics is just, it's not, not unusual. So that was the sort of the evolution of my go into politics.
But how did you assess your chances of winning, especially you have like 20 candidates?
It's about Liberian people, the country that I love so much, the country that I want to raise my children in. I was born and raised in Liberia. I am everything I am because I'm a Liberian. I'm nothing else besides a Liberian. I'm a very proud Liberian woman. It wasn't about my chances. It was about my stepping out to the Liberian people and saying to them, I want to serve you. If you would allow me to serve you, I will see to it that you have the things that you need to live a successful life. I will make sure your children go to school. I will make sure that when your wife or your sister is ready to give birth, they will have a decent hospital to give birth in where they're not being cost every day. You know how it is at a Liberian hospital, you go there to give birth, they put cost your mind all day long. Oh, anything you want to look that may hold for, not born again, what it may add. Pregnant women are going through the worst torture in the medical system because the nurses and the doctors are not being paid. And so they ill treat the Liberian people when they go during the most vulnerable moments. And so I told the Liberian people, here am I, my name is MacDella Cooper. I want to make this nation into a nation that you'll be proud to live in and call home. And I will see to it that you have those things. It will not happen overnight. It takes all of our collective efforts to make it happen. But if you should elect me, I will see to it that we have the nation that will be proud to call home.
Wonderful. Going back, excuse me, going back to your platform, electricity in every home. Recently, the government has complained about electricity theft, as well as LEC has issued information to their users to let them know that there will be some sporadic supply of electricity. What is your opinion of the situation, and what would you do if you were president right now?
Well, if I were, that's a very interesting question. You gotta look at this across the board. Yes, I talked about creating and providing electricity, in every home. And Liberia right now, we have a hydro dam, which is Mount Coffee, which is producing, I believe, is somewhere around 60 watts of electricity. We have the grand generator that's also producing, I want to say somewhere around the same, I heard it last time was sort of 85 megawatts of energy being produced across the country. We're having a major problem distributing and managing. That's the two things I see LEC is having problems with. Again, I don't work for LEC, I don't know. This is all based on research. The economy is bad right now. Liberia's economy is pretty bad. So even if LEC was able to provide electricity across the country, you have people who don't have money to pay for electricity. Their priority right now is putting food in their bellies and their children's belly. So LEC is not making the money they need to make to even fuel up the generator to provide the electricity and pay the employees that need to be working to manage and distribute the energy that's being produced. So it's a chicken and egg. Which one comes first? Mm-hmm. You have to build a better economy in Liberia. Our economy is hurting. And so if we don't do well in getting the experts to help sit around the table and figure out how we can get out of this economic mess, electricity is not going to help us right now. It is a start, it is an addition, but electricity is not the top priority in my view right now. In my view right now is to get the economy working. We have got to make Liberia an investor-friendly environment. We have lost a lot of our contracts. If we do not make Liberia investor friendly, there will be no one coming to spend money in Liberia. There will be no more jobs. When the departure of the United Nations Commission on Mail, when they left Liberia, they took millions, if not billions, of dollars with them. And I'm not saying they picked it up and carried it. Their presence in Liberia brought jobs, whether it was housekeeping, babysitting, drivers. Now, all of those people who were providing services for the on-mill troops that were in Liberia from 2005 to just a year ago when they left, all of those people are out of work. Who besides government remains the largest employer in the nation. Firestone is broke. Firestone is laying off people. Mattel Steel is broke. GVL is broke. All because of the bad economy, everyone is suffering right now. Business people even providing goods and services. The hotel chains cannot even sell a hotel in half of the hotel rooms per night. There's a serious dialogue that needs to be had right now. We need to get the economic experts on the table, around the table, I should say, to work out something for our economy. Make the country investors friendly so that we can have investors coming in, because it's only through direct investment can we fix our economy. Foreign aid, begging for money is not gonna do it. Never has. It's a short-term solution to a long-term problem. On-mill came in a short-term solution, on-mill left, and the problem still exists.
Madam Cooper.
Solutions.
Madam Cooper, I want you to just explain. We have questions on Facebook, and we'll also be opening our phone lines very soon. But just explain to me, when you say investor friendly, what does that mean and how can that be done?
Okay, there's a lot. That means a lot. Now, when you want to make a country investor friendly, there are several things you have to do. You have to make it easy for companies or investors to come into your country. Number one, have security, which we seem to be having a good security. But the more people become vulnerable and people cannot afford to buy food for their families, it will disrupt our peace. Because when people are hungry, you cannot control them. So until we can get our people working and putting money in their pockets, people are going to be on ease, right? So we have to keep the security going. We have to make sure we have enough police forces trained to we have to have enough police officers trained to safeguard the country, enforce rule of law, and make sure people are doing the right thing in the country. So Liberia is known to be a safe place. Then we have to make sure when investors are interested in investing in Liberia, we pull out the red carpet for them. Meaning, if they're interested in forestry, what are some of the hurdles that would prevent them from coming through? Now, at the national investment level, there are several things that need to be revamped. And I will say this, openly. I hope someone from the Investment Commission is listening to this. When you go investor to the Investment Commission, you have two committees you have to meet with. You have the regular committee with all the associated parties, the associated ministers. And then when you go through that particular committee, then you have the subcommittees with the deputy ministers. It's too much for one investor. And you know how we do business in Africa. We want people to come in, show their interest. We vet them, make sure they're not jokers, because we get everything in our country, especially the jokers. We want to make sure we vet them well. If they have the money to invest, we fair deal with them and make sure they go through the process of investing without being asked for too much bribes. We need money. This is not money for one individual. This is money for the Liberian people. When we bring an investor in Liberia, the Liberian people benefit from it, because that one investor is going to invest by paying taxes, by giving government revenues, and we can put that into our economy to help offset some of the things that our operating budget is in dire need of. So making Liberia investor friendly is to create a safe environment for investors where they're not being taken advantage of by one person's greed. That's what I mean when I say make Liberia investor friendly.
Danielle, before you come in, let me read some questions off Facebook. I got two here. The one from Dave Jar said, the practice of high salaries started with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but you seem to have rave assessment of her service for 12 years. Where do you think say that again?
No, you're very low, and my volume is turned up very well, very loud.
Okay. All right, let me do it again. Can you hear me well?
You're still very low.
Okay, I can try reading the question. Can you hear me?
It's all the same. If I move any closer, people will be looking.
Did anyone try to call you on your phone? Maybe that's why it caused the volume to drop. Are you hearing me any better?
Me?
Are you hearing me any better? Is it better?
No, it's still the same. And my volume is turned up loud. Okay, try. Go ahead and try.
All right. What Dave is asking about is you spoke about high salaries, right? And he's saying the high salaries, that was something introduced under President Sirleaf. But you have a good assessment of the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf administration. Can you hear me better?
Yeah, I don't know what to do with. I can hear you in the background, but I'm not necessarily hearing what you're saying. I heard one thing about high salary. That's all I heard.
Okay, let's see here. Not better? All right, let's see what adjustment we can make. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. To join the conversation, you can call us at 706-684-0392. Our number is 706-684-0392. But give us a minute, let us adjust our equipment. We seem to be having low volume with our guests.
Okay, hang on. I'm going to try to use a headset here. You guys just give me a minute. I'm going to use a headset and see if Okay. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear you very well.
Excellent.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well. I look a little funny with this thing, but.
Okay. Okay, here's a question from Dave Ja. Dave is my brother. He said, the practice of high salaries started with President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, but you seem to have rave assessment of her service for 12 years. Where do you think Sirleaf has succeeded as well as failed in her 12 years?
Well, no, I don't. First of all, I did not say I have rave reviews about Ellen's 12 years. I said the question that was asked to me was, do I think Ellen's running for the presidency? What did I think about it? And I said I thought it was great for women across the world, and not just Africa, but across the world. That's what I said. And so we have to listen to questions and listen to the respond very well, not add words. Now, Ellen started high salary things because Ellen was balancing. Well, I'm not going to speak for Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Ellen was also bringing in resources that we've lost, and there has not been a replacement since Ellen left office. So those loopholes are still there affecting the economy. And it's time that we listen very well and to conversations and not just use words or add words. Ellen brought in the United Nations, or at least the United Nations came when Ellen was there. They brought in billions of dollars into our economy. And today, Ellen's gone, and that very group that came in when she was there, the group is gone. The United Nations, the UNMIL is gone. So we've lost billions of dollars that was flowing into our economy is all gone. And so the high salaries that's being paid in the absence of the billions of dollars that was coming in just from UNMIL, we have to find a solution to fill in that loophole. Also,
you have companies like Firestone that was making a certain commitment to our government in sense of revenues. Now, Firestone has declared that they're broke. We have to come up with an economic solution. So continue to do what Ellen was doing, and without a replacement, it's not a smart idea. It's not a smart economic move. So we cannot continue to pay a person $15,000 or whatever the amount is when we had money coming in for education that was subsidizing education or healthcare. We don't have those same influx of resources coming into the country. So why continue to pay? Again, it's no attack against the current government. And if I need to attack the current government based on facts, I would do that. But I'm just saying we need to have a replacement, or we have to balance the economy.
Ms. Cooper, with that said, in the 2017 presidential runoff election, you endorsed George Weah, current President George Weah. Do you still stand by that decision?
Listen, when I went to the polls after round one, when I stepped out of the race, the Liberian people decided I was not their option for the 2017 presidential race. I, as a politician, had to make a decision. And my decision at the time was generational change. I went to the polls, I spoke, and I voted for generational change. I was not going to have, Ellen was in power, Unity Party was in power for 12 years. We needed change. And I voted for change. So it could have been George Weah, it could have been anyone else, whether it was Alex Cummings or whoever else. I was voting for generational change. And I stand by that decision till today. If we were to go back to vote again, I will still continue to stand by generational change.
Okay. And
oh, sorry. There's a question here on Facebook, which is kind of a follow-up to what you just asked, Danielle, from MacDella Cooper. So what is your take on the governance of our nation at this point in time, especially the economy?
Well, as I mentioned, the economy is pretty shaky right now. We are in a really big economic mess. We have got to find a solution to fill the vacuum within our economy. There's a lot of vacuums, as I mentioned previously. Money's coming in, billions of dollars, they're gone, and no replacement. We have got to go out. All of us Liberian people, every citizen of this country, got to contribute in some way. Some people can contribute through their votes. Some people can contribute through their talents and whatever else. This is a national problem. Our economy is in a big mess right now. We have got to find solutions. We have got to start by enticing investors to come to Liberia to invest. We're not going to depend on foreign aid, because it's only a temporary solution to a long-term problems that we have. We gotta find a solution. And a solution to me is investment, investment, investment.
And so, Ms. Cooper, Ms. Juzema Walama has the question, if you'll be running for president again in 2023.
If I'll be running for president again in 2023?
Yes.
Well, 2023 is a long way away. I cannot call the shot so early. I don't know. It's the Liberian people that have to make that decision. It's not me. The Liberian people have spoken, and I respect democracy. And the Liberian people have voted in a president that they wanted, and we all have to respect that. That's just what it is. But in terms of determining if I were running 2023, is too far away for me to determine that at this very moment tonight. I'm just trying to get through this interview tonight and go to school tomorrow and be with the students at my school.
Got it. And so with that, I know we're short on time, so we want to get your opinion on some of the recent events that have occurred in Liberia. One of them, the More Than Me saga. I'm sure you've heard of the sexual abuse that occurred under the the leadership of Katie Myler. And so as someone who runs an NGO, runs a school in Liberia, what measures do you have in place to ensure the safety of children at your school?
That's a great question. The safety of children is top priority in my whole program. The foundation is the umbrella, and the school is a tier of my foundation. But because we're involved with children who are not our children, we have put in measures in place to make sure every child's protected, every child's human rights protected. And so we have professionals that come in every so often to train our workers, to teach our children about their rights and some of the things that are considered abuse versus things that are okay, I guess. We want children to understand their rights and when to speak up. We give them the rights to speak up when they feel something is wrong. We educate our staff to make sure they understand child's right, child abuse, what it means, child abuse. We have professionals that we hire to come into our program to train our staff. And so we don't make any mistake with that. And that's why, thank God, we've been in good standing for the past 15 years of operation. Unfortunately, Katie Myler, I know Katie Myler from around town, from the philanthropic circle. She came in with a great intention to help, but it's just these things has to be managed. It has to be, when the moment something comes up, it has to be nipped right there and then, so that there's no confusion about your position. I tell my staff at my school, when they're hired, I tell them, I am a human rights activist. I don't infringe on anyone's human rights. And if you should infringe on my children's rights, you will go to jail. And I will see to it that, if you're found guilty, you will remain in jail so you don't hurt another child. And if you interview any of my staff, they will tell you that Madam Cooper has a zero tolerance for child abuse. Zero. So people play around with these things in our society. It's not just Katie Myler coming from the outside. There are a lot of people who have neglected our children's rights. If you're a child, you have no rights until you can bring some hustle at home. You can bring something at home. Then you're considered a respectable person. But I think children should have rights. We are going through a heavy or hard economic situation right now. So, as a proud Liberian, as a mother of 3 children, as an activist, as a caregiver for children, I adopted so many children around Liberia. Some of my children I adopted several years back. They're in college now. You can ask and interview any of them. I have a severely strict rules, and there's no if, buts, or ands about my rule. I don't go around other people's children. They don't sleep in my bed. They don't come anywhere near where my private areas, in terms of when I say the privacy of my home. I have a private area, which is my suite. They have their private space, which is their suite with their caregivers. We don't make spaces. There's no child coming to my bedroom besides my own. So those are strict rules that I put in place since 2003 when I started this operation. And with the amount of child abuse cases that are going on across, from the Catholic Church to Katie Myler's program to all these other, I don't intend to be a part of it. And so when I'm around kids that are not my kids, there's always another adult around, always. And it's not because I don't trust myself. It's just because that's the right thing to do. And so I feel sorry for Katie Myler and her organization for what they're going through. And I also feel sorry for the young people who have been heavily affected by this situation. This should never happen across Liberia. Today, one of the things I'm working on is speaking up loudly about the number of rape cases in Liberia. Right. It's been put under the carpet for too long. And today we're saying rape will have no place in the Liberian society. So we are really, really getting together as Liberians, and we're saying rape, whether it's of women, adult women, or children, young girls, rape will have no place in our society.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I watched your interview with VOA, and they asked you about your op-ed you wrote about violence against women under President Sirleaf, stating to the point that she was not doing enough. So how is rape case or the violence against women, what are you saying about it now?
We're going to put pressure on the lawmakers to take this and make it a priority. This is not something that could be overlooked anymore. We're going to add our voices. We're going to get a slew of people across Liberia with voices to really make a case and push our lawmakers to prioritize making sure people who are accusers are put on trial, and if found guilty, they should bear the penalty, whatever the penalty is, as according to the law. But we cannot allow our mothers and our daughters and our children to be raped and nothing happens. No, it's not going to happen anymore. I have a daughter. I have sons. I don't want my kids to be harmed by anyone and the person's walking the street to go and harm another child. I will see to it that we press our lawmakers, because that's why we voted them in. We voted them in to go to the House, whether it's the lower or upper house, to create laws that will protect us as citizens of Liberia. So, Madame Sirleaf was preoccupied with so many things coming out of Civil War. I'm sure rape was not one of her top priority, but we're going to prioritize it now. I think we're way past war years, and we cannot use war as excuse anymore. Liberia is going to be a great country, and we're going to start the process of making a great country now. So I'm on the bandwagon. There'll be trials for those who are accused, and we're going to see to it that if we have to call our colleagues from around the region and across the world to bring expertise in that we're lacking, we will do that. But we will see to it that every perpetrator gets what they deserve. And we would then eventually see to it that women and girls are protected.
Another issue that has rocked the Liberian community and just Liberia was the saga of the missing money, or the missing container of money. And so the Kroll report has been published. People have had an opportunity to read through it. And I guess what we can't dispute is that some of Liberia's money is unaccounted for. Do you believe the current government is handling this situation properly? What is your opinion on this situation?
Well, I let me add this before I start answering the question. The battery is running very low, so if I should disappear, it's not because I disappear on your question.
Okay.
So I just want to give you a heads up that I just got an alert that I have 1 minute left on the battery power. But the missing money, it's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate that we're going through this situation in the midst of a really hard economy. We don't need this right now. Now, Liberia is a very small country. You have a container filled with money. Someone knows what the money is. Somebody has the answer. And the Kroll report, I must admit, I have not read it through its entirety. Y'all got me stuttering here because I'm trying to speak Siri. You're the Siri people that might want to see me more. But the truth of the matter is, someone knows where our money is, the nation's money is. And we have the citizens, with Liberia, we have to empower our citizens to have a louder voice. But because we have left so many things unchecked, people are so uncomfortable coming forward to speak up. Because like I said in my 2015 speech, when the Liberian people are ready, they will have the country they deserve, or we deserve. When the Liberian people are ready, we will not wait for a Kroll to find our money. We will do our own internal investigation. So
with that 1 minute, let's talk quickly about the Kambina Janet impeachment. You can give us your opinion on that too.
Again, I feel a lot of empathy towards the impeached. I wasn't part of his impeachment process. The accusations was something I wasn't too familiar with. And so I can't really give a solid opinion. We need people who can help us push the rule of law in our country. Without the respect for rule of law in Liberia, our country is going nowhere. So again, I'm not in the House, I'm not in the Senate. Given a chance to be there, I probably would have then be able to make a sound decision about his impeachment process. But it's just Where do we go? Are we going to impeach everyone? Again, I really don't have a solid answer for you on this one, but I just my sympathy goes out to the impeached, and I just wish him and his family best of luck. And hopefully justice will be served. And this is how it is. It's just it's politics. It's politics. Today you're in, tomorrow you're out. Today you have an ally, tomorrow you hoping that you still have an ally. I don't know. I really don't know what to say, but it's Liberian politics.
So we have a question from some in our audience. They said, maybe you're not sure about running for president right now, but what about the legislature or becoming a representative? And that's from Robert Gagwa Jr. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was actually asked by a slew of young people and some women's group in Monrovia to run for office. And I told them I will make that decision when the time is right. There's nothing has come up. So I don't have a position to run for at the moment, but I'm open to serving the Liberian people. And I think when the Liberian people are ready to have MacDella Cooper in the Senate, they will put me there, because it's all about electing the individual into office. I cannot impose myself. They know, the Liberian people know I'm here, and they know the works I've done. And if they're ready for me, they will put me into office. So it's all, again, it's not my decision. It's a decision of the electorates. So it's, yeah.
Aaron Mane is asking, what is your position on those who are calling for the establishment of a war and economic crimes court in Liberia?
Listen, I don't have any problem with any kind of court. People who have done injustice to our people should be removed from from doing more injustice. I think they should be put on trial, and if found guilty based on credible sources and information, they should be removed from being around citizens who are free. Criminals should not be in our systems, and so anyone who have hurt Liberians should be put on trial. And if found guilty, like I said, go to jail. Simple. The law is the law. It should work for people. Well, it should work for our nation.
All right. Go ahead, Danielle, so we can wind down. We have 1 minute.
Well, I was just going to say, do you have any final thoughts or any last words you'd like to give our audience before you leave?
No, I think I want to thank you guys for having me on tonight. It was wonderful talking with you. It's a bit late here. It's it's almost 11 p.m. now, but it's past my bedtime. So but no, it's really great talking to you guys, and it's always my heart to reach out to the diaspora community, because the diaspora community has played such a major role in helping us, those of us who are back home, keep the country going, even in the midst of everything we've gone through as a nation. The diaspora has held up the fork, and they continue to do so. So I want to thank you guys, everyone in the diaspora. Continue to do what you do for the country. We cannot give up on Liberia now. Liberia needs all of us now more than any other time before. We are going to go through this tough economy, but we're going to, hopefully our leadership will find a solution and bring the country to where the voters felt that this leadership could bring it to. And so Liberia have gone through many things throughout its history, and it's managed to bounce back. And so we all just have to hold together to keep Liberia going, keep our hopes up, keep our spirit up, keep the hopes of our people up, and let us all just stay positive. Good things are ahead of us. And I know Liberia will be okay. I don't doubt for a minute Liberia will be okay. There are some great people sitting in the diaspora that need to come home. We want you guys to come home and join the struggle. It's a good place to be. It's home. It's our blue dot on the earth. So I want to thank you guys for giving me this opportunity to be with you tonight.
And just in case you decide to contest for the presidency or the legislature, come back here and focus on Liberia to announce that.
Absolutely. You guys will be the first one I come to make an announcement to.
So I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank our audience for watching. Next week, we're going to come with our two lawyers who are going to debate the pros and cons or the constitutionality of the impeachment that of Justice Kabina Janneh. So back to you, Danielle, for closing.
Yes, thank you again to our guest, Ms. MacDella Cooper, and thank you to our audience, as always, for joining us. We'll be back again next week, Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, as always. So thank you, and have a great week.